Welcome to the Expert Edge. This is the show where we bring in experts in their fields of health and wellness, and we hear their stories and learn what they see working in the field of diabetes reversal and prevention. So I'm really happy to introduce today's guest, Michael C. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Lucia. It's nice to see you again.
You know, Michael is a health and wellness professional, and he has experience in sports performance, fitness, and disease prevention and management. He's worked in commercial fitness, corporate health, and medicine. He has a master's in clinical exercise science and is a certified diabetes care and education specialist, as well as a national board certified health coach. So you can see that he's got all kinds of qualifications, and we're going to pick his brain today about ways that we can use the experience and the knowledge he has gained to help us in our journey to reversing diabetes and prediabetes. So before we dive into that, Michael, tell us a little bit about how you got started with your interest in the connection between lifestyle and health.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking. This probably goes back to when I was a child and my grandmother had type 2 diabetes, but she was a kind of a slender woman. So it's not like this is going back into the 80s, and that kind of was a foreshadowing for my work in diabetes. So I'd gotten into cardiovascular
Mm-hmm.
medicine and
Mm-hmm.
and then an opportunity became available to get into diabetes. And I worked at a, a specialty clinic, the Joslin Diabetes Center here in Boston, for a number of years, and then worked at other hospital networks. And so I got more involved in diabetes to go along with my background in cardiovascular health, and they kind of go hand in hand. Um, and then more recently, in the last 10 years ago, I realized it became more important to support and partner with the people I worked with rather than teach, advise, and counsel them. So that took me on a path to health coaching, where I spend, so I bridge the area of exercise, um, cardiometabolic health, and health and wellness coaching.
I love that. And so I think that's really interesting how you kind of saw it in your family and then you ended up working in that area as well. As you have done that and switched kind of from the education consulting world into working directly with people that need exactly the help you can provide, what have you found to be some of the most powerful approaches to dealing with diabetes and actually experiencing either not needing medications anymore or reversing prediabetes? I'd love to hear, what do you find working for you?
Yeah, yeah, certainly there are multiple types of diabetes that need to be said. Traditionally we
Mm-hmm.
think of type 1 and type 2, but there are types we call LADA and Moody and gestational. And so there are more than a half a dozen. And over my 15 to 20 years in diabetes, I've seen just about most of them, if not all of them. I think me as a provider, there's doing and being skills. Doing is providing people with information and knowledge, but being is being present and compassionate
Mm-hmm.
with them, right? And empathetic and non-judgmental. Because there's so many in the field of diabetes, there's so many stereotypes and so many stigmas that go with it. So they're the being and doing. But certainly, there are foundational. Many of your um, listeners may know the ADCES 7, which are the foundation of diabetes self-management around, nutrition, physical activity, um, monitoring, risk reduction, and so forth. But I think the probably the first thing a person needs to do is accept, right? They need to accept their condition, that I have this condition. There's no blame. Um, there's no fault or nobody's fault here, but they need to accept it. And then once they accept it, they can choose to, how do I choose to respond? And then I would say they need to, not to try to carry the burden themselves, because it's a heavy lift. So getting family, friends, medical community in support of you. So you have to be willing to open up and embrace that. And you have to be willing to ask for it and ask for what you want, not what you don't need, right? You don't need people telling you what to do, do this, do that. You just need people to support you on your journey. Um, and then I think this is the most important thing. This is all important, but be positive. I listen to people and they should on themselves all the time, right? They may be doing 99% things right, but that 1% thing they feel is wrong, they'll criticize or ridicule or beat themselves up about it.
Mhm.
And negativity is not going to get you anywhere. Actually celebrating, literally, yeah, I did it. I monitored my blood sugar. I went out for a 10-minute walk. Literally do say this, shake and pat yourself on the back. Because that makes us feel good. We're coming from a place of positivity, of growth and development, not one, I didn't go for a walk today. Last night I had a piece of pizza. I know I shouldn't have done that. And so we're really find what's not working or what we think we should be doing. So those are some of the basic things. Ask for help, accept it. There's no blame. It's no one's fault. Um, you know, be positive, embrace it, embrace the journey, and celebrate your wins.
I think those are really great things to bring to the forefront today in our discussion because they are often the things that people miss. Like it's kind of easy to go with tactics, the do this, don't do that. But one of the things you said that really struck me was the being willingness to even like talk to other people. And if you need support, it's like you can't get it unless you're willing to tell someone, this is where I'm at. I have this diagnosis. And it reminds me of, a client that I had earlier this year. And she told me, she says, I really wish my sister would come into this program with you because she really needs it. Well, I didn't, she gave me her sister's name, but I didn't hear from her. And just a few weeks ago, she popped up in my community and I got to talking to her and I'm like, oh, are you, sister to so-and-so? And she was like, yeah. And she said, I didn't even know she was diabetic. And here they were, members of the same family, but they weren't talking to each other because like they were embarrassed. They didn't want to admit, that they were dealing with it. Now, all of a sudden, they can actually be support to each other because they're working on this together. They're on this journey together, but you can't do that if you're not willing, to have some self-disclosure, to talk to some people about it. So I love that you brought that up. I think that's so important. And then you also brought up the piece around, the tactics. There are some tactics that, we want to implement if we want to make changes going forward. But most of those tactics involve changing something we probably do either as part of our routine or as a habit. And so, what are some of the tools that you found are helpful when people are looking to make a sustainable long-term change in their routines, behaviors, or habits?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, one is, your mind is your best friend, but it can be your worst enemy. So decide, have a vision, create a vision, share it. Where do you want to be in 6 weeks, 3 months from now? It may not be your values, may not be around physical activity, maybe nutrition, what you eat resonates with you. So it can be any number of things.
Mm.
Identify, a few things, one or two things that you want to work on, and take a moment to reflect on that. How will that look in your life? If being more active, what will that look like? Be specific, right? I'm going to walk, 3 times a week for 10 minutes. I'm going to eat more fruits and vegetables and maybe have this conversation. Don't do it with yourself. Do it with your healthcare provider, do it with a family member, share that. some positive accountability. But tell them how you want this to support them. Don't just say, because they'll become the police, right? They can become the should police, right? And yeah, so create a vision, do some put it on a piece of paper, right? A few things. It
Mm,
doesn't have to be elaborate, but write down some of your thoughts, and how those thoughts will turn into action, and how those actions will look like in your day. You know, if you're going to do a walk, when are you going to walk? And it's not going to be 100% every time. If it's, monitoring your blood sugar, whatever method, what will that look like? If it's reducing your sweets and processed foods, what will that look like? But a lot of people know basically what they should do, right? It's just
yeah.
putting those ideas and concepts into a plan and then starting to carrying it out. And again, celebrating your wins, um, and not beating yourself up. And, bridging the gap between knowledge and action, right? Building a mindset, um, a daily routine or actions, whatever that may be, So it's going to take, I would do a little soul searching, thinking about it. Where have you had success in the past? What are you ready to take on? We hear it's 99 degrees, Not many people are going to go out for walks, right? So think about a lot of the things, social support, time of the year, resources that you have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important because getting clear about what is it you actually realistically can start doing. And like you said, I think many people get overwhelmed when they make a list of 10 to 15 things that they need to change. Whereas if they just picked one or two and start with something simple, it can really make a difference. I know I often encourage people to start with something like making sure they're getting enough water because that's what a lot of people aren't getting enough of. And yet it's a fairly easy thing to add to your routine. Yes. So drinking more often, carrying your water bottle, just simple things. And once those are in place and part of the routine, then it becomes easier to add one more thing. And I really believe that people need to understand how quickly some of these things can add up for benefits. It's like you don't have to have everything in order to have a benefit. Sometimes people get discouraged, like, I have 50 pounds to lose. But if they just lost 10% of their weight, they can often see a substantial improvement in their metabolism. So it's like you don't have to wait till you've lost 50 pounds to enjoy better health. That could be in, 3 or 4 weeks, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Make your actions so small that you can't fail. Make them
Hmm.
so small that you can't fail. And that's how in our goal-driven, succeed society, that doesn't seem like, why would I make it so small that I can't fail? Well, because success begets success. And what we
Hmm.
appreciate appreciates. So,
Hmm.
and as you said, 1% adds up, right?
Yes, it
1%.
does. Yes, it does. And I love the way Jim Clear talks about it in his book Atomic Habits. If we only improved 1% on a regular basis, the exponential effects really can grow and explode over time. So don't underestimate, I think Proverbs says, don't underestimate the day of small things because they can add up, both for good and for negative outcomes. But just choose some things that are going to give you those positive outcomes. And absolutely, you can see that over time. You work with a lot of people to help them with cardiometabolic health. Tell us, first of all, what does that term mean? And then what are some ways people can actually implement some of those methods in their daily routine?
Yeah, cardiometabolic health is just what cardio is be cardiovascular health. So your heart and your vascular system. So many conditions that, um, you know, often diabetes can lead to certain cardiovascular. So somebody may have a heart attack or a
Mm,
heart procedure like a bypass or an angioplasty, a stent place, that type of thing, or um, and then maybe your heart and maybe your vasculature, your circulation. And metabolic is metabolism, how your body regulates. In this case, in the case of diabetes, how your body regulates glucose, right? If I check my blood sugar, what is my blood sugar? And long-term elevated blood sugars really affect what we call micro and macro vascular diseases. So the micro would be those of my eyes. The macro would be my heart, and then also kidneys and other vasculature, right? So, and for me, the shift has been from reactive sick care to proactive health care, right? Let's avoid problems. Now, our traditional medical um, system would have you believe that a pill is your solution, and in many cases, pills with lifestyle are most optimum, but we'd want to intervene earlier in that process, right? So all the things that are favorably impact our diabetes favorably impact um,
mhm,
our cardiovascular, and I would also put renal because it goes cardiovascular, renal, metabolic, because what
mm,
happens to our kidneys and our heart, and they're all interconnected, and so
yeah.
you be hearing that those terms, cardiometabolic renal disease, because
Mhm,
many of the therapies and also our lifestyle habits, all impact those. So if we have diabetes and high blood sugar, we're putting ourselves at increased risk of cardiovascular disease, of kidney disease. And likewise, if we're eating healthy, exercising regularly, enough sleep, uh, taking medications that we need, those may favorably impact our cardiometabolic renal condition.
Michael, I'm kind of curious. As you work with people to make changes in their habits and their choices, how much of the time do you think people could actually completely reverse prediabetes?
Oh, it's very reversible, right? And everybody's different. Everybody's different. That's the thing, and everybody responds to treatments differently. But nonetheless, the treatments in terms of lifestyle are benefit. So it's important that when I meet somebody that I take a thorough health history. I understand their lifestyle habits, their successes, their wins along the way, some of the challenges they may have, their attitude, right? We were talking about attitude before. Um, but, some modest weight loss um, can often, delay or prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes. Yeah.
So if someone actually starts like implementing some of these lifestyle approaches to improving their cardiometabolic health when they're just pre-diabetic, they're not yet full-blown diabetes. If you had to put a number on it, what percentage, if they chose to make those changes, do you think could reverse it, like not need medications and have normal blood sugars um, overall? Like about what percentage do you think could get to that place
Oh,
if
that's a
they
great
implemented?
question. And some people may listen to this. Again, depends where they are in the course of their condition. We know that, most people have had diabetes for 5, 7, or more years prior to being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in the case, right? They've had it. It doesn't come out of the blue. You've had it for a long time. So where along that process have you intervened? Um, I would say, with the right support and the right attitude, I would say that three-quarters of people could could significantly delay or prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes if they're in that pre-diabetes
Hmm.
state. Now, there's a lot of confounding things, but I would stand by that, and I will have to do some research on that. Obviously, we know from the diabetes prevention program, and other programs looking at, these were, research studies that answered that very question you pose. How can we, how does lifestyle
Hmm.
prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes? These are proof of concept studies or large population studies. The only way you'll know is find the local DPP program near you or engage in a support program.
And I think though that just knowing that probably more than half of the people that have that pre-diabetes diagnosis and aren't currently diabetic can really be able to normalize blood sugars without the need for medications is in and of itself cause for hope, because that can make such a difference in someone's life, just to realize that I actually have the ability, I have the power to make changes that can support my body to healing. And I think a lot of people don't really get that message very strongly from maybe their traditional healthcare providers. They hear more things like, you're just going to need some medication for the rest of your life. And so, go watch your carbs, go exercise, but you're still probably going to need this. And that's not accurate for everyone. So I think it's important for people to understand that there really is hope for a reversal, especially in the pre diabetic stage. And even if someone maybe couldn't get off all of their medications, say they still needed some medications for blood sugar control, what makes it worth the effort for them to still implement a lifestyle change? Like what can the difference be for them in terms of their long-term outcomes?
Yeah, first, never lose hope and faith, right? Never give up hope and faith. Well-controlled diabetes is the cause of nothing. If we control our ABCs, our A1C, our blood pressure, our cholesterol, right, we may have diabetes, but if through, those foundation pillars of ADCES 7, we manage it. We're going to live a healthy, long life with diabetes. Now, the opposite is true. If we ignore it and we let our A1C escalate and our blood pressure to get out of control and our cholesterol, and we don't do follow-up, the economic and more importantly, the human costs are pretty severe. I mean, I've seen, the effects of uncontrolled diabetes, and from dialysis to heart bypass surgery, and we do not succeed through fear, but we need to, we can't sweep it under the rug, right? We need to, accept and get the support and guidance and take some of that responsibility upon ourselves.
I think that is a really key idea. I come from a family full of diabetics, and I've seen the difference that people's individual choices can make in their outcomes. When my grandmother was diagnosed, she lost, about 40 pounds of extra weight, no longer needed any medications to keep her blood sugars under control, and never needed them till she died at the ripe old age of 96. And that was not from diabetes. So she was able to really completely obliterate those effects of diabetes in her life, not needing meds or, and having a healthy life for most of the rest of her life. And then I've also seen relatives that, went through the tragic journey of losing sight and losing multiple limbs and then losing their lives. And it was very clear that they made very different choices about how they dealt with their diagnosis. And so I really want people to hear the message that you have a lot of power over your outcomes. Like you can make choices that make a big difference in where you are 20 years down the line or 40 years down the line, depending on what your age is now. And that it is worth investing time and energy into enjoying the best life possible because that can make such a difference. What would you say if you kind of had to sum up top priority counsel for someone that's listening that might be dealing with an A1C that's been creeping up? Maybe they're on medication, maybe they're not. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, the resources that are available, the changes in the area of diabetes care have exponentially improved, right? Now, certainly we have what we call social determinants of health, right? Access to quality health care, access and affordability of education and healthy foods and resources and, one's financial health. These are all factors that certainly we need to think about, right? Our social determinants of health. But I would say the resources are out there. You need to be your own advocate. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to work with your healthcare team. You may need to, raise your voice, right? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So you may have to, speak up for yourself and educate yourself to the resources that are available, to the therapies that are available, and, and work with them, right? I mean, they're in healthcare for a reason. They want to care for people and help people, but it's challenging. But you need to be your own best advocate, and you need to do your legwork. I know there's a wonderful program, uh, Power Project, right? Or Project Power from ADA. It's an amazing program for people with prediabetes. So there are resources out there wherever you are along that continuum with your diabetes and other health issues.
Michael, I know you've been working on a new app that you'll be using in your coaching program, and I know you've got a small group of people you would like to work with and give them access to this for free while you're kind of putting the finishing touches on it. You want to tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. As I said earlier, to do this alone is a big challenge, is a heavy lift. Whatever you're trying to do, whether it's diabetes or you're trying to, manage stress or sleep better, relationships, whatever it may be in terms of your overall health and well-being. So I've gotten involved as a health coach where I focus on, my client-centered process that is not through psychology and evidence-based models of behavior change. And I work with people, but I can only work with so many people. So I'm in the process of developing an app that I will combine in a hybrid fashion. So in-person support and coaching services with an app, an AI-based, artificial intelligence-based app that will help people and support people on their journey to health and well-being. So I'm asking for a few people to contact me, and Lucia will give you my contact information to reach out to me, email me, and let me know that if you're interested in finding out more information. So we can jump on a call. I can tell you a little bit about it. This app will be on Android and iOS. And then we will meet just like Lucy and I are meeting, either Zoom or a phone call periodically to help you achieve your one or two goals, whatever it may be. So through what we call visioning, we have conversations like this, and I learn about you, you learn about me, and we embark on a journey to help to support you to achieve your best self.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity. And if you want to jump into this kind of first stage of the program with Michael as he is launching this app, sounds like as we are recording this in June of 2025, he's looking to get a few people working with him on this maybe towards the end of July or so. Is that correct, Michael? So if you're hearing this in that kind of time window, feel free to reach out to Michael. His email address is in the description for this video. So right below this video, click on the description. You'll have his email address and just drop him a line, put coaching program in the subject line so he knows why you're contacting him. And then he will be happy to set up a phone call with you. And then you can kind of see if this is going to be a good fit and figure out kind of what might be your best next steps. So just wanted to give you that opportunity to connect with Michael. If you're listening to this and it's been 2 years since we posted this, you can still reach out to Michael by email and just see what he's up to. He might have something new pulling out of his sleeve at that point. So anyway, I just want to say thank you so much, Michael, for being with us today and for sharing some of the things you have learned in your experience working with people to help them to reverse and to really enjoy better health as they get this metabolic issues under control. So thank you so much for being here with us.
It's been a joy. I always enjoy our conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, health is wealth, and it comes by choice, not by chance. So I'm so glad that you've been here with us today.